Hi, I'm Sharaad Kuttan, and welcome to Let's Talk, the show that brings you the most important conversations in art, culture, and ideas. Today, I'm speaking to Sophie Lemiere. She's a political anthropologist, also a long-time researcher of Malaysia. She's been working here for over a decade and a half, edited many volumes on issues of politics in the country, including Minorities Matter. And she's also recently, it's one of her many hats, involved in a social enterprise that she set up called World Wanderers. And that's the subject of our discussion today because of a particular project that she has initiated called PITCH, or that's the acronym at least. It stands for Preservation of Indigenous Intangible Traditions and Cultural Heritage. You can see why I had to read it off my notes because it's very long, but
sorry for that.
Sophie, you've been on the show many times and we've talked to you about Malaysian politics, and this is slightly different because this is not about the electoral cycles, it's not about political parties. Yeah. This is about creating a project that seeks to preserve Indigenous knowledge. And there are a lot of terms here, a lot of them problematic that we need to kind of work through in the next 20 or so minutes. So tell us, Sophie, somebody who's worked in Malaysia for so long, and especially in politics, why did you start to move into this realm?
Well, first, thank you, Sharaad, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this new, very exciting work that I embarked on about 2 years ago. So you know, I turned 40 a few years ago, only 2 years ago, and I started to kind of seek for new things and new ways to apply the research that I was doing. As you know, I've been researching in Malaysia for over 16 years, mostly on politics. And I always try to understand better the use of emotion in politics, the thing that we don't see, and try to explain that. And after a while, you know, researchers get, most of them, I can't talk about all of them, but a lot of us, we're getting frustrated with not being able to really make any changes, right? So we're talking a lot, we're trying to explain things, but sometimes we just want more action. And so I always saw research as a mean more than the objective itself. So to me, research is a tool to change things, to influence things. So the idea was really about, okay, what can I do? And I had a few months, I was very lucky. I had several fellowships in great American universities to give me the time to think and to meet people and to understand what could be done. So World Wanderers came from that experience and from that kind of thinking. So the objective of World Wanderers, we're not only looking at indigenous population, actually. We're looking at marginalized population in general. The two axes that we chose to look at is indigenous population on one hand and women and girls on the other end. So we are trying to create tools to actually empower and kind of balance the political power of those two groups. I developed this organization in Malaysia, but actually I'm creating a global network to work with other organizations. As you would know, I'm working as well with the history workshop in South Africa at the University of Witwatersrand, as well affiliated with several other European and American universities. So this is kind of a large concerted effort to do things in different parts of the world together.
Right, okay, so you're an academic.
I am.
Part of what you've been saying sounds like the work of an activist or somebody in the world,
yes.
You know, NGOs, but you call World Wanderers a social enterprise.
Yes.
Okay, so research, empowerment, and then social enterprise,
yes.
which is also about a notion of how you can make money,
yes.
Do a business,
exactly.
but with some social purpose or
exactly.
some impact.
Exactly.
Could you help sort of tease out the different strands that are happening in PITCH? Because PITCH could be a PhD thesis, I guess.
True, it could be, definitely.
Or the work of a museum.
Oh, it could be, definitely. So basically, at World Wanderers, we're doing different things. Again, we're creating tools. So in order to do that, of course, we need the money to create the tools. The way that social business work, we obtain money either through grants. This usually is for non-profit project, okay? But as well, we are receiving sponsoring for what we call high social impact project. Those kind of projects are usually for profit because the sponsor we receive are usually from foundation or social investment funds who are looking to invest in projects that for them will have a high impact in society, a positive impact, but a return on profit. So this is a difference from the usual NGO kind of work. The interesting thing about that is that we are building things a little bit in a different way, and we can have a wider impact because we have larger investment. But at World Wonders, we are also running non-profit projects. So the Peach project we're talking about today is a non-profit project. It is supported by a Malaysian foundation, and we're actually currently as well looking for new sponsors and new partners. And we have American partners. So what is the project about? I guess this is the question, right? So what we want to do is to empower people through the reclamation of culture and narrative. So what we see is not only a Malaysian phenomenon. We see that minorities, whether we're talking about indigenous people or whether we're talking about women, are often absent of the national historical narrative or the national narrative in general. They're just forgotten, or they are extremely exoticized, and actually they are not occupying the space in the history of the country that they deserve. So we're trying to create tools for them to be able to reclaim that narrative. So in order to enhance the visibility of those kind of people, we are creating a platform that actually can amplify the voices. So in this adventure, the role of World Wonders is really to be a conductor, right? So it's to link people and people in certain space and people in other space who can actually work together to amplify those voices. So the partners that we have in Pitch, one of them is the Library of Congress. The reason why we chose the Library of Congress and why they accepted to work with us is that, again, it's a nonprofit project, and they have the resources as the largest library in the world to create a digital collection that would archive and document all the intangible cultural heritage that we are giving them. So basically, it is for the first time an opportunity to create a digital open access platform where anyone in the world who has an internet connection can actually learn and see what this intangible cultural heritage is about.
Okay, right. So before we get into the substance of it, what exactly is out there that you're trying to capture, there are some key terms, right?
Sure.
And part of the issue is, and kind of the title, that very famous essay on, Can the Subaltern Speak by Gayatri Spivak, you use the term subaltern, right? I mean, the idea of the marginalized, the voiceless in history. The question is, this historical stage, right? Many countries, for whom the nationalist project is an unfolding one, have spoken for themselves,
yes,
right? Why is it, do you think, it's not happening here? And how problematic is your role in facilitating that? Because for whatever reason, you're not a Malaysian, right? Not Malaysian. And is that a problem? Is that a problem in the design of the project?
So it is something that we have questioned as we were working on it. So of course, the place that I have, as I mentioned earlier, is more of a convector, right? So I have a very good network outside of Malaysia among the academia and the founders and grantors of this project, partners, and I have a very good network in Malaysia. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to use the best of both, and it's like, yeah, use me, use my connection, use my ideas, and let's do something together. What's very important to understand is that the people involved in the project, I'm the only foreigner. So it's here in Malaysia, 100% Malaysian are involved, and our researchers will be collecting the stories of the tradition bearer in Sabah and in Sarawak are all from Sabah and Sarawak. And what we're trying to do is actually to identify the people who will actually go back to their own community to collect those stories. So it is one of the goals of the project as well, to ensure and to facilitate the transmission of this knowledge that could be lost and that is endangered because it's not preserved well yet.
Right, because I don't want you to misunderstand. I mean, I'm not a kind of literal nationalist in the sense that I don't think it's necessary. In fact, in terms of intellectual work, I think we truly live in a borderless world, and and we know that ideas and collaborations and have been catalyzed by the stranger in our midst, the person who comes in, who sees things differently. And, you know, we think of a Furnival who thought of the plural society. I mean, he based it on what he saw happening in Malaya and what he saw happening in Burma, right? So there are many ways in which the foreigner, the stranger, the person who's from a different part of the country. I mean, God knows there are people in parts of Borneo who think Malayans are strangers.
True.
And vice versa, right? And so there we are strangers, but that could be a potent mix, right? When you have people from different. So what I want to say that because we often trip over the idea of indigenous.
Yes.
In Malaysia, the word indigenous can be applied to a whole range of groups, including the majority group. So when we talk about the Malay society, we actually do talk about they are themselves, they see themselves as indigenous.
Exactly.
That's what Bumiputra means,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And that's a majority community. So indigeneity, marginality don't match each other completely in this country, right? So when you use the word indigenous, what do you want to mean by it?
Yes. So basically, indeed, it's a very controversial term. It's a highly politicized term. So the reference that we use are two. One, we are looking a lot at the UNESCO definitions because it's kind of a reference for the entire world, and usually those are not controversial. The second thing is that we're talking to the people themselves and the way they consider themselves. One of the reasons why I really want to work on the East Coast in Sabah, for example, is that a lot of the population there do identify themselves as indigenous, but a lot of other people would disqualify them as indigenous. So those are actually ongoing debate to which I'm not going to give a solution, but we can actually bring the debate to another level. So anthropologists do not always agree about it. Politicians, as you know, are using this very, very highly in all their campaigns to divide people. So it is something that we address. Those are questions to which the answer is being built as we work as well. And we want to reinforce the voices of those groups who are actually saying, well, we are indigenous to Malaysia. This is what we do. This is our link to the land. This is our link to the sea. Or they would explain, for example, the borders, the land borders to us do not make sense. We are the people of the sea. So do not categorize us along the frame that would define people who have been living in the land and not in the sea for over centuries.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a short break because it's a lot to digest, and we're going to come back with more. Stay tuned to Let's Talk. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad Kuttan. With me, Sophie Lemiere. She's a political anthropologist and also the founder of a social enterprise called World Wanderers. And they have a project, the subject of today's conversation. It's called PITCH, or it goes by the acronym PITCH, Preservation of Indigenous Intangible Traditions and Cultural Heritage. And that's what we're going to talk about now. We've left the very thorny question of indigeneity. Yeah. We could be here for hours talking about that. But let's talk about intangible traditions. What is it that might be, and how can an archive or a library like the Library of Congress, one of your partners, preserve it, and for whose benefit?
Of course. Thank you so much. So one of the very big line that we are trying to follow is really the definition of UNESCO, right, about intangible cultural heritage. We call it ICH as well. ICH is actually part of a greater concept that we call indigenous knowledge system. This idea about trying to preserve indigenous knowledge system started like as early as as late actually as the 1970s in other countries, South Africa and for example. So basically the definition of it is really whatever kind of tradition we don't see, okay? So that's intangible, it's not something you can touch. So it is the knowledge.
Like oral traditions,
exactly.
Storytelling?
So oral tradition, the music, for example, the knowledge of craftsmanship, meaning the method, the relationship to universe or to nature, so that encompasses traditional medicine. So basically, we are looking at that knowledge and how we can ensure that this knowledge is transmitted, is disseminated, whether we're talking about the next generation within the community it belongs to, or whether we're talking about giving a platform to show to other people in the world what is this knowledge and how actually, it is beneficial to the entire world. So there are several axes that we're looking at. So we have different researchers. Each of them is looking at one particular axis of ICH.
Okay, so you've got a plan. It's very schematic. Now, one of the major, I guess, talking points today, and especially on social media, has to do with cultural appropriation, right?
Yes.
So it's a powerful, kind of red button type of issue, right?
Yes.
People get very upset by this when they feel that something's stolen from them. But the world also has been a constant flow of things. We have glass beads from, and porcelain traveling right around the globe, right? For hundreds and hundreds of years. People have always shared, and they've always taken from others and innovated on the basis of what they've seen coming from elsewhere. So how do we sort of make sense of this? And when you help capture this information and this knowledge, and it's placed in an archive like the Library of Congress, who's going to benefit?
Yes.
And how do you protect the people, as it were, who originated this information and knowledge from losing it or losing control of it?
Of course. So there are two things here. One is cultural misappropriation. So we've seen that, for example, in big French designer, I know very well, who would be using some particular traditional outfit and then sell it in their collection without mentioning where actually it's from and who that tradition and craftsmanship belongs to. So that is all. For example, the very famous pattern in the Navajo Native Americans carpet that are being reproduced everywhere in the world, including in China, without crediting the Navajo or without them to get any incentive over this. So what we're doing is actually the very opposite. We are trying to highlight the fact that intangible cultural heritage needs to be protected. There is no law in Malaysia today to protect traditions, to protect this heritage, okay? So what we're trying to do is actually to capture it, to make sure that it is well archived, well preserved, that we know and we don't forget. So how we do that? We're going to talk to the tradition bearers, and we record them telling their own stories and talking about what they know and how they know and why they know it and what they wish to transmit. So meaning that all of those stories, we are stories collector. Those stories, we will have it on a digital platform that is built by the Library of Congress to be accessed all over the world. So what's going to happen? Anyone in the world can go on that website, so it will be actually help with the Library of Congress, but it's going to be a third-party website, and we're hoping and talking to different private gallery and public museum here to have direct link to make sure that anyone can access very easily. You can go on this digital platform and read about or see the video and the explanation of the tradition bearer who will explain about their knowledge.
Okay, but I wanted to ask you, in the context of global capitalism, where property rights are established through copyright, right? That's essentially the way you do it.
Yeah.
Is there going to be copyright, and will it be respected, one? And is it possible does the law even recognize the kinds of things that you want to capture as copyrightable, if you like?
Exactly. So this is one of the main issues, right? That's what I was highlighting, that unfortunately this kind of heritage in Malaysia yet is not being protected by the law properly. So the way that we work with the Library of Congress, because we're doing an open collection, this is open data. So basically, nobody owns it. Nobody ever can own any tradition but the people it emanates from. This is a very clear thing. At the Library of Congress, we actually are working with Malaysians who are curators at the Library of Congress, who are actually from Borneo itself. So they understand very well what we're working about. We're working with lawyers, we're working with ethics committee as well. So there is no possibility of using any of this part of that collection for commercial purposes. Meaning that if the tradition bearer themselves want to monetize on their own knowledge, it's their choice. But what we are doing, we are not monetizing on their knowledge because, again, we're creating an open access free thing, and it is restricted. There cannot be any commercial use.
Right. So Kuching recently had this huge new museum, right?
Yes.
And I wonder if your project comes in where there are gaps. And you know, and is it where, you know, what are those gaps, and why is it that you and your associates are filling that gap instead of the state or some other actor?
Yeah. So we are understand that the project is very new, right? We started to work together on February 1st, but of course the conceptualization of the project dates from 2020. So we are reaching out to, this is one of the museums we're reaching out, because we want to be able to share the collection, meaning that we want to make sure that they have a direct access to whatever we do. So the chance that we have is that the Library of Congress in the US has resources that no other library or museum in the world has. Okay, we can talk about the MoMA in the US, etc., but they are the one interested to do it. So they are offering their resources to create something that every Malaysian and every Malaysian institution, every Malaysian museum can benefit from. And of course, every member of the community. One thing that I wish to add, if you allow me, is that from that experience on the ground with our researchers, we are also want to work together with the communities about, you know, what else can be done. So because we're very conscious about this idea of dissemination, what's happening is that very often the young people from those areas went to the city. And so they're not, the interest for the knowledge of the elders is not that strong. So we are working on an illustrated book that would be for an audience from, let's say, 7 to 77, and to help, you know, to imagine what a world without culture would be. So the book is actually a dystopic story. It's a dystopia. This book will be distributed for free to the community with the help of our local partners, and we'll be organizing discussion and workshop about that. So we're talking about 3,000 books that we'll be distributing among the community.
But you have also a commercial dimension to this.
So there is, so this book has another, so the one that are going to be distributed for free to the community will be in vernacular languages of lingua franca, right? So we're going to be one in Malay, and then we're going to have another one in the local language. But then we do a commercial version of the book. The commercial version of the book is going to be in English for an international market. This is different because this is a production from artist and writer. So then there is copyright because it's a dystopic story. It's a new story. So the copyright will go back directly to the writer and to the artist who contribute to the book, who include actually its Malaysian artists and artists from East Malaysia as well.
All right, fascinating. So much in this very rich and a very lengthily titled project.
That's why we call it Pitch.
Preservation of Indigenous Intangible Traditions and Cultural Heritage. Thanks. So we would run out of time, but it's a pleasure to
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much again.
Right, and good luck.
Thank you.
So I've been speaking to Sophie Lemiere. She is a political anthropologist and also the founder of World Wonders, a social enterprise. This has been Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad Kuttan, only on Astro AWANI.